All right, so welcome to our fourth class on the alchemist archetype. And I'm excited to talk about this archetype today. It's definitely been very, very present in my life. I'm going to share some personal stories with you all about how I've been working with this archetype in the last few weeks. But we're going to first start by understanding really the concept of alchemy and why we need to work with the alchemist archetype and how mastery of this archetype can really serve us in our lives. So, just for context and for really framing this archetype within this journey that we're taking through these 5 archetypes, we want to remember that we're beginning our journey together with the archetype of the witch. This is the archetype where we learn the gift of sovereignty. We then move into the medicine woman, which is where we learn the gift of integrity. From there, we moved into the mystic, which is where we learn the gift of vision. And the vision that we attain through the mystic, this big picture vision of our lives, of our karmas, of our soul path in this lifetime, and the shadow work that we're here to do, leads us into the archetype of the alchemist, which is where we actually go through the process of transformation. So the gift of the alchemist is transformation. And really, this is the process of changing one thing into another, right? That is really what transformation is. It's taking something and it's turning it into something else. And this is what when we think about alchemy, we think about death and rebirth. We think about the cycles of death and rebirth. The thing is that we can say all of these things and it's like, yeah, death and rebirth, alchemy, transformation, like, yeah, sounds great. I'm into that. But until we're actually confronted with the circumstances in our lives where we need to use alchemy and transformation, it's kind of this abstract concept and we can feel very like on board for it, like sounds great, until it's actually happening to us, right? And so as we were speaking about just before we started this recording, we don't need alchemy until things are going wrong. We don't need alchemy until something is not going our way or something is hard or we're being challenged. Like life is hard and we don't know why. We don't know what's happening. We're feeling initiated. We don't know where we're going next. We don't know what the heck's going on. Basically, that's when we need alchemy. When everything's like cruising along fine and dandy, like we don't really need alchemy. It's a kind of an abstract concept to us. And so it's kind of hard to talk about it in theory, which is why I'm going to share some personal stories with you today. But the concept, right, is like the death and rebirth concept. What we need to remember about that process, even though it might sound really nice when we say it, like death and rebirth, yeah, sounds good. We get to come back even more powerful or with greater skills or with greater clarity or with greater wisdom. But first, we have to go through the death. And the death part requires us to embrace the unknown, to face and enter the void, and to basically let go of something that we're really clinging to. Like, death is not like, if it's easy for us to let go of the thing, then we likely don't need alchemy for it. Like if it's something easy to release, like, I didn't like that anyway, we don't need to alchemize that. It's not challenging us. And in my opinion and perspective, I used to be someone who definitely chased a lot of growth and a lot of transformation. And I've definitely been on a very accelerated path when it comes to transformation and alchemy. I've had like the amount of intense death and rebirths that I've been through in my life in my 33 years is kind of crazy. And part of me used to almost create or seek out those experiences. What I've learned now is like, we don't need to seek them out. Like, they're going to come for us, whether we like it or not. We can just sit back, live our lives. We don't need to push for transformation. Transformation will find us. And, like, life is hard enough. Like, life is going to continue to present us with things that are hard, things that we don't like, things that we don't want to be happening, things that challenge us, things that are initiating us. And that's going to happen on its own. We don't need to make it happen. Alchemy is the process of what we do with that raw material that life is handing us when it happens. So becoming the alchemist is becoming the type of woman who receives that challenge from life and is able to take that and do something with it and turn it into an opportunity and turn it into medicine and turn it into power and turn it into gold. That is what alchemy really is. It's turning the raw material into gold. And so, yeah, we only ever need it when things are challenging us. And we spoke last week about how evolutionary astrology, there's the quote by Jeffrey Wolf Green of like, the resistance we have to the change we signed up for will determine the magnitude of the problems we face in our life. Like, basically, alchemy is the process of embracing the change we signed up for on a soul level, even though our ego is going to be in resistance. And how can we work with those two parts of ourselves, the part of ourselves that's in resistance and the part of ourselves that understands that there's a bigger unfolding here and understands that this is an opportunity? How can we work with those two parts and like bring them into harmony so that they can work together so that we can actually do something with this raw material that life is handing us? So the first step in this process is really life is throwing something at you. Like life is throwing something at you. It's coming usually out of left field. It's usually not something we see coming. It's usually not something we like. It's like something we don't like is coming our way and we didn't choose it. Now, what are we going to do? And normally what we do, the first thing we do is we usually either pretend it's not happening, avoid it, or we resist it. And we like try to go run in the other direction. So the first step in this alchemical process is awareness. Something is happening that I don't like right now. Something is happening and I fucking hate it. Sucks. Okay. When we can acknowledge that that is happening, the resistance that we're feeling around that thing is going to start to get really big and really strong. And because even acknowledging it means turning to, especially if it's something that we've been kind of avoiding for a while. So if it's an emotion within us that we've been avoiding for a while, or a situation in our life that needs to change that we've been avoiding for a while, or like it's ultimately something needs to die for the rebirth process to happen. So what needs to die could be a relationship. It could be a career. It could be a place that you're living. It could be like something external like that. It could also be a belief system, an emotional energy that you're holding that's keeping you stuck. It could be like a dynamic that you're playing out in your relationships. It could be like an energy that you're holding, right? So whatever it is, we're being asked to let it go so that something new can be reborn. And we don't want to let it go. We are clinging to the thing. We're clinging to the old identity. We're clinging to the old belief system. We're clinging to the old relationship, whatever it is. We're like, no. I don't want to let this go. And something comes into our life to confront us, to be like, hey, you know that thing you've been avoiding? Here it is, big in your face. And now you got to look at it. And so when we accept like, okay, something's happening, I don't like it. Something's happening, I don't like it. Something's being taken away from me, or something's changing and I don't want it to change that way. I don't like it changing that way. That is the first step. Because when we can see that with clear eyes, then the resistance is going to start to bubble up. And where it's going to bubble up is in the body. The resistance is an energy that we're holding in the body. And the resistance is really what the resistance is it's our ego. It's our ego's attachment to whatever the thing is that we're being asked to let die. Whether it's a version of ourselves, whether it's a job, whether it's a house, whether it's a career, person, relationship, identity, doesn't matter. We don't want to let it go. We're resisting letting it go. And so when we see something's happening, something I don't like is happening, we can start to turn towards the ugly thing in the corner that we want to deny, and we can start to look at it. When we look at it, all that resistance is going to start to come up in the body, and feelings are going to arise. A lot of feelings are going to arise. In order to, what we tend to want to do, and like, I'm going to share my story in a moment, but I can tell you all for 100% certainty, like I'm speaking from very, very recent experience. Like I'm talking this morning, yesterday, the day before, like this is happening in real time for me. So what happens is we want to try to solve the problem, and our ego wants to try to solve the problem. And our ego is like, oh, problem, let's try to solve it. So what our ego wants to do is it wants to use the mind to think our way into a solution. When we do this, we go into negativity, we go into fear, we can go into overthinking, we can go into like spiraling, like everything's fucked and there's no hope. Like we try to solve it from this place of the mind. We are going to really get ourselves into a negative space, because the mind doesn't have a solution. The mind is trying to combat the resistance to the death that actually needs to happen in order for the expansion to occur. So when we notice that's all happening, what we want to start to do is we want to start to have tools to process all of those feelings that are coming up in the body. And again, from very firsthand, very recent experience, I can tell you, using these tools is going to be the absolute last thing you want to do, because your mind is going to be telling you, no, I've got to solve this. No, I don't have time for that. I've got to solve this. Your mind is going to be like, no, I can't do that right now. I've got to research, or I've got to think about it, or I've got to try to come up with the solution. The mind doesn't have the solution. The solution is going to be found in the death process, which is exactly what the mind is trying to prevent from happening in the first place. Hi, Rio. Come here. So we need to work with these tools, and the tools are basically anything that's helping us move stuck energy and get out of our head and into our body. So one example is putting on music and just dancing and moving your body, shaking your body. Like resistance is going to be held in your body. So your body's going to get like stiff. Essentially what's happening is like you're resisting the change that the universe and life and God and goddess is trying to allow to pour through you. You're resisting that. So your body's going to go into like a sticking pattern, a holding pattern, right? We want to start to move the body. So as much as you can, and you're going to be like, that is the last thing I want to do, Hannah. And that is exactly when you need it. It's like blast some music, shake, move your body, try to move some of that, especially if you feel your body getting really like tense, because that's the holding pattern. That's the resistance energy, like really holding. Another tool is breath work. Breath work can really help you get out of the mind and into the body and just move some energy. Crying is a good one. Highly recommend crying, especially if there's like big emotions coming up that just need to be released, right? And any kind of somatic exercise. So any kind of way that you're expressing and letting that emotional energy move through you. It could be running, it could be dancing, it could be shaking, it could be breathing, like all these things, making sounds, right? All of these are tools, and we're going to have all of these tools in Rose Temple. We're going to have like guided practices for each of these so that you can actually use those tools as these things are coming up. So as we start to process the feelings that are coming up, the stuck stuff, because when we turn towards the resistance and we're like, okay, that little shadow in the corner that I've been ignoring, now I'm going to look at you, a lot's going to start to come up. As we start to move that energy, we have an opportunity to shift out of victimhood. Because essentially, when something we don't like is happening, we feel like a victim. We're like, oh no, poor me. I can't deal with this. I don't know how to deal with this. And when we can start to move some of that energy through the body, we can start to pivot our belief towards seeing this don't like situation as an opportunity and even a gift. And when we turn towards it as an opportunity or a gift, that is the alchemy. Like that in and of itself is the alchemy, because now you just became sovereign, you just became powerful, you just became a creator in the experience versus a victim of life. Now you have agency. This is an opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn, for me to heal. And you don't necessarily even need to know what the opportunity is to turn towards it in that way, right? Like you don't need to necessarily know what it's teaching you or why it's happening yet, to just say, I'm open to the possibility that this thing that's happening that I hate is happening is teaching me something and is for my greatest good. And I'm going to look for ways to see it from that angle. I'm going to look for what that lesson could be. What am I being invited to learn? How am I being invited to change? Hi, baby girl. You want to be in this? Yeah. She wants to be in this. Okay. So we use the tools to get out of the head and get into the body. And that's when we can start to feel. And that's what's hard, because feeling all that stuff is the whole reason that we've been avoiding that change the whole time in the first place. So that's why the situation is something that we actually require alchemy for. If the situation wasn't testing us, wasn't challenging us, wasn't stressing us the heck out, we would, then there's no emotions there. Then there's nothing there to alchemize, right? We would just be like, okay, and we would just deal with it and keep going. And so the fact that it's making us like recoil tells us that there's something underneath. There's something deeper there. There's something that we are being invited to look at, to process, to transform. And that's what alchemy is all about. So the death part of the alchemy process is the full surrender to the unknown and a goodbye to what was without knowing what will be next. That is why it's so hard, because faith is all we have in that process. We do not have certainty. We do not have guarantee. We do not know what is on the other side. That is why actually dying is our biggest fear. But even letting go of an identity, even letting go of a job, of a relationship, whatever it is, we don't know what's on the other side. So we're like, that is the definition of faith, right? Faith is trusting when there's no evidence. That's what faith is. Faith is trusting when there's no evidence. So in order for us to actually go down into the death, which is the prerequisite for the rebirth, we have to work with faith. And one thing that can help us to embrace that faith is to understand that we have this false narrative in our culture that death is the end. And it's not. We know as witches, as women, as feminine beings, that death leads to rebirth every single time. That the maiden has to die for the mother to be born. That the leaves have to fall and the plants have to die for the spring to happen. We cannot be in perpetual bloom. So we know this, but we have so much deep conditioning from our society that the death means the end, that it's a rewilding process to even embrace death in this way. It's also the most vulnerable thing we can do. It's the most vulnerable thing we can do. And it's not going to be like, each of us is going to have a place where it's most vulnerable to let go, you know, and it's going to change throughout our lives what it is. And whatever is most vulnerable for us, whatever brings up the most like pain, that's going to be the thing. That's going to be the thing. It's going to be that thing. It's not going to be like an easy one. You know, sometimes it is, but mostly it's going to be like the one that you're like, no, anything but that. Just anything but that one. And it's because like the greater the surrender, the greater the faith, the more opportunity there is for the rebirth on the other side. But we can't have the rebirth until we embrace the death first. The death is like first. And so this alchemical process requires us to descend into the body, into the sticky feeling, into the shadow, into the thing that we hate that's happening, and feel it and like do deep inquiry there and like be with it there and like feel it in our body there. Like we have to go there into that place that's most vulnerable. We don't have to like it. We don't have to even wholeheartedly embrace it, but we have to be willing to go there. And that is the place where our greatest gifts lie. Because this is the change that we signed up for at a soul level. It's like we can't grow and expand in big ways until we're willing to die and let go in big ways. It's like the level to which we're willing to let go will be the extent to which we're able to grow and expand. So we don't need to like it. We don't even need to embrace it, but can a small part of us trust it? Can there just be even a small part of us that's like, okay, I could see that this might be leading me to something better, even if I don't know what yet. And that trust of the process is also a muscle. And it's something that the more times I go through death and rebirth processes and come out seeing how it was all happening for me and how it was actually the greatest, most pivotal expansion opportunity in my life, the more times I've done that, the more it builds that trust muscle for me to be like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I don't see how this is happening for me. I hate it. But I can remember like 15 other times where I felt the exact same way. And in hindsight, I can look at all those other times and see that actually all of those experiences were some of the most important experiences of my life. They needed to happen because they led me to a growth, a wisdom, an expansion on the other side that was gold. There was gold in that. So that life experience can teach me, and that's a part of the process too, is like being like, okay, because it's your nervous system is going to freak out. Your nervous system is going to be like, no, fuck this. And so we have to use our mind to remind ourselves like, okay, do you remember when like that crazy shit went down and that crazy shit went down and that crazy shit went down? And like, it really seemed bad. It seemed bad, 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 bad. All of us, all parts of us were like, this is my worst nightmare. And now we can look back on that and see, the rebirth that was on the other side was worth it. Like, we needed that. Okay. So, like, I can remind myself of those things and be like, okay, I'm going to somehow be okay. I'm going to somehow come out of this on the other side okay. I don't know how right now. The answer is not clear right now. But can I remember those experiences and use that to build my trust muscle? So through this practice, the resistance is going to keep coming. Like, it's not like a one and done resistance. It's like the resistance is going to come. This is usually like, this alchemical journey is usually like, it's a process. It might last a week if it's something small. It might last, a couple days if it's something really small. It might last a month, might last a year. Like, it depends the severity and the extent, but the resistance is we're gonna be working with the resistance at each step of the way. So those practices that help us tune into the body and like move that energy of resistance through the body are essential to keep coming back to. I'm going to talk about working with prayer through this practice more in our next class on the priestess archetype, because once we move through the alchemy of the death and rebirth, the priestess archetype is where we take all of that and we actually like expand our energy. Now our energetic field, now we've let go of something that was holding us back. And now our energetic field is more clear and we can channel our energy into creating. And that's what the priestess archetype is. It's working with our Kundalini and our life force energy to be creators of our lives, to create something from this, to actually create something with this alchemical process. But prayer is a really helpful piece to work with, especially when you're in that like, why me moment. It's like, work with prayer. Ask for clarity, ask for messages, ask for guidance, ask for smooth transitions, and for the highest timeline to reveal itself to you. And then working through the resistance is where we allow that highest timeline where we can actually receive it. Because oftentimes when we're so stuck clinging to the old thing, we don't want to let it go. We're not even going to see the highest timeline because we can't, because we're over here. We're still holding on over here. So, okay, yeah, I spoke about that. So I'm going to share my story. My story is that, oh gosh, okay. So about I want to say like 2 weeks ago, it was probably like right after we did our last call on here. I have been experiencing some ongoing mysterious health symptoms over the summer. I had I'm sure you guys remember, I've been sick a couple times, haven't been able to come to calls. I've been having weird allergies, and I've been trying to figure out what's going on. And right after we finished up with speaking about the mystic archetype, I had this intuition that the symptoms that I'm experiencing might be caused by mold. And I started diving into that, and it was like, oh, fuck no, like, that's not what I want. Like, if I have mold in my house, like, that means I have to move. And some of you know my story, some of you don't, but for me, the thing that I'm most attached to right now is my home. It's the thing that I have the most attachment to, because I went through a really intense alchemy process about a year and a half ago with a relationship that ended, a toxic, abusive relationship. And when that relationship ended, I made a commitment to create stability for myself. And part of that was this home, and uprooting my life in Mexico and moving back to Canada and settling down in this home. And now I'm having these health symptoms that I confirmed over the last 4 or 5 days are caused by my house. Like my house is making me sick. I left for 5 days. I went to my parents' house while they were away and house sat for them. And my symptoms were pretty much 100% gone by the end of it. Came back yesterday, woke up sick this morning. So you can bet that every part of me is like, no, don't take my home away from me. Right. And this ties into something that one of you shared before we came on about when an alchemical process reminds us of something that we went through in the past that was really hard, that we do not want to go through again. And there's like a connection of trauma there. Like we are associating, whether it's like the fall, as one of you shared, or like moving with this other bigger, heavier trauma that it's not necessarily correlated with this time, but our nervous system has put 2 and 2 together. So there's also like an alchemy of detaching that and being like, okay, like I can move houses and it's not the end of the world. And it also, it's not the same as the last time that I was moving houses when I was getting out of an abusive relationship. Like it's just moving houses this time, you know, it's a very different level. But the thing is that like, it's not really about what it is. Like one of you might be like, moving houses, no big deal. Right. But for me, it's so connected to my sense of safety and all these other things that it's like stirring up this deep alchemy process of shadow work for me to recognize, oh, I've attached my sense of safety to something external, which is my house. Before, I attached my sense of safety to something external, which was my relationship. So that got taken away. Now I attached it to my house. So now that's getting like, and it's like, can I view that as an opportunity for me to step into more sovereignty and for me to source my sense of safety from within? Because things are going to change in my external environment. And when I look at my chart, this is why the mystic leads into the alchemist. When I look at my chart, there's a setup in my chart for drastic, shocking, sudden, abrupt things to disrupt my sense of emotional safety. Like that's a setup that I have in my chart. What is it teaching me? It's ultimately teaching me to go towards my north node, because all of that's connected to my south node in Cancer, which is like clinging to safety and codependency patterning. It's teaching me to go into my north node, which is like, I am the stability. I create the stability and I can create my circumstances, which is my north node in Capricorn. So the chart gives us like the map of what that shadow work is that we're being invited to do. So that when this process is happening, because it's not just like, okay, something's happening, we don't like it, we move our bodies, and then we get through it. The alchemy actually comes through doing a deeper inquiry, which in this example, the deeper inquiry is like, okay, like, why do I have such resistance to moving homes that I wasn't even willing to, like, when these symptoms first started getting bad in the spring, someone mentioned to me mold and I was like, no, we're not even going to look down that rabbit hole. Nope. That can't be it. Like, what's going on there, right? Like, what's the clinging? What am I actually clinging to? And so that deeper inquiry requires us to look at the resistance and look deeper and be like, okay, I'm resisting mold, I'm resisting moving, but like, what am I actually resisting? I'm resisting maybe processing some of the emotions around the last time that I had to move. Maybe I'm resisting again, losing my sense of external safety, which I've connected to this home. Maybe I'm even resisting moving away from certain relationships in my life that are connected to this home that might be holding me back from my next level expansion. Like, what's actually there? There's like something deeper underneath the thing we're resisting that's happening. And that's the process of alchemy. It's like getting out of our own way enough, moving out of the ego enough to see what am I actually clinging to, and where is there something for me to integrate about myself through that? Where is there like a part of me that I'm either denying or clinging to that I need to integrate into my person right now? And then how can I view this as an opportunity to expand? So even though I have no idea where I'm going to move right now, or I don't even know if I need to move, like there's still some possibility of me addressing that mold situation. I don't even know fully 100% if it's mold that's causing my symptoms. I know that it's in my house. Whatever is making me sick is in my house. I know that. That's what I know for sure. But like, can I trust and embrace that there's a process happening both internally and externally that's inviting me to grow? That's when I move from being a victim to a creator of my destiny. Because when something we don't like is happening, it's very easy for us to be a victim, to be like, I hate this. This sucks. Someone save me from it. Like, don't like it. Want no part of it. When we can turn towards it and say, okay, what's the opportunity for me here? How can I grow from this? How can I turn this into something that I can expand from? Like, I've just made a decision, like there's no chance I'm moving unless it's an upgrade. I'm only going to move if it's a better house than the one I live in right now. So, okay, goddess, if you're telling me that this house is not meant for me, and you're trying to, maybe there's other things that I don't even know or see happening that are going to happen, that it's of the highest timeline for me to move. Great. Make it better. It has to be this or better. Like, that's the only timeline I'm available for. I'm available for the timeline of either everything resolving in this current environment in a way that's for my highest good and my health, or something even better that I can't see right now. And I can't see it right now because I'm searching for apartments every day for the last 2 weeks. I'm on there. I'm looking. Do I see a better apartment? No, sorry, I do not. But can I try to access that faith that life is not against me? Life is not punishing me. Life is not going to put me in a situation that's bad for me. Like, it's got to be happening for me. So there's got to be something for me in this. And, I made a joke to my friends the other day because I was staying at my parents' house and I woke up with all of this energy, and I realized how depleted my energy levels have been from living in this toxic environment that I wasn't even aware of consciously, because I essentially transitioned from like being in a toxic relationship that was draining a lot of my life force energy. I had about a 6-month sort of in between recovery, and then I moved into this house, which is another environment that's like draining my energy. I was like, who knows how much energy I'm going to have when I don't have this toxicity in my life? Like, I'm going to be unstoppable. I woke up one day with more energy and I was like, this is happening for me. Like I'm going to have so much energy. Like I'm not even going to know what to do with it. I can't even imagine having that much energy. So like, can we see even without seeing? Like, can we trust that there's something there? There's an opportunity. There's like, and let me tell you, like, this also came up for me in a super intense way when I was going through the end of that relationship. You know, like that whole situation was a huge alchemical, that was like one of my biggest ones. And I knew as soon as it happened, I knew like the relationship ended and there was this veil that was lifted that allowed me to see that person in a very different light and see what was really happening in that relationship that I was unable to see while I was in it. When that was happening, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of emotions moving through my system, but there was also this higher self part of me that was like, this is happening for your work. This is happening for the woman that you serve. This is happening because you needed this initiation to understand women that you have been working with for years. Many, many women that you have worked with and will work with have been through abusive relationships. And you needed this experience. You needed to alchemize this experience in order to serve them better. Like there was a part of me that had that clarity. Sometimes we have the clarity of like, okay, like I'm alchemizing this because like it's part of my mission, or because like it's part of my generational healing. Like that was a piece that came much, much, much later, probably a year after. I was like, oh, yes, it was for my work, but it was also something that I was alchemizing for my lineage. Like that I was alchemizing for my community, that I was alchemizing for the collective. So sometimes we're going to know why, what's happening and why it's happening, but other times we're not. Like right now, I'm like, I can see glimmers of what could be the reason for this, but it's not fully clear yet. And even when it's not fully clear, like, why is this happening? What is the lesson in this? Trusting that there is one, trusting that there is something, not just something like something actually incredible, you know, something that's actually like not just like okay fine, but like incredible on the other side. And that's going to be the rebirth. So we spoke a little bit about illness at the beginning of the call before we went on recording, and I just want to say like that with any kind of a physical sickness, I really do believe that we have the opportunity to go through this whole alchemy process with it. It's like when we first start getting sick, we were like, no, I'm fine. We feel a little tickle in our throat and we tell ourselves like, I'm not getting sick. We just like, we might take a little vitamin C, but we're like, no, I'm fine. I just got a dry throat. And then we get more sick and we're like, oh, yeah, no, I'm sick. I'm actually sick. That's the moment when we turn to the thing and we face it. We're like, okay, I'm sick. Then the descent is when we let ourselves be sick. We let ourselves lay in bed. We let ourselves turn to the medicine that we need. Sometimes the alchemy is like, you know, especially if I've had this very strong resistance to pharmaceutical medication. And let me tell you, I have had to overcome that because sometimes you have something and it's like, you need to take antibiotics. And, you know, I've had that happen. And the alchemy was like, yeah, antibiotics save lives. Antibiotics can save your life, and infections can get really dangerous. And when you can get rid of them with an antibiotic, that is life-saving medication right there in that moment. And so like there could be a process around that, you know, there could be a process around letting yourself rest, lay in bed, like go into the death of that sickness. And then is there something that you're learning there? Is there a process that you're coming out of that with greater clarity, with some kind of wisdom, with some kind of an upgrade? When we have a fever, our body is going through a cellular upgrade. Like many cells die off in a fever. That means that we make new cells. New cells is a literal cellular rebirth, right? So there's always, with physical health stuff, with any sickness, there's always an alchemy process that we can embrace, a deeper inquiry maybe of like, how did I get sick? What's energetically going on? What's emotionally going on? I know for me, I always get sick when something emotional is going on. When I'm not standing up for myself, or where I'm not having good boundaries or things like this, like I'll get sick. And then I'll be like, now I can't show up for anyone else or help them. And I have been overgiving, so I have been getting sick. Right? So like, what's the deeper inquiry there? Because the deeper inquiry is the part where we actually find the gold. That's through the deeper inquiry, the shadow work. And we're going to have like journaling and like all kinds of shadow work practices within Rose Temple for you to actually go into all of that deeper inquiry within the alchemist archetype. And then it's like going from victim to creator, right? Like, how is this sickness happening for me? How is this an opportunity for me to learn something more about myself, or for me to have some kind of an upgrade? Or what's the opportunity for me to learn deeper rest? Like shifting the narrative around what's happening from being a victim to a creator. And we can do this with anything, and knowing that the resistance, there's going to be resistance along the way, right? So there might be resistance when we first feel the tickle and we're like, I'm not sick. There might be resistance when we have to lay in bed all day and we can't do anything and we're supposed to be productive, and that internalized like conditioning about productivity and about cyclicality, like about death being the end of the cycle, starts to come in. That there's going to be resistance there. Maybe there's resistance to taking antibiotics. Then maybe there's resistance to sitting with like when you're sick, you're sitting with yourself. You're like stuck in bed all day. You can distract yourself, you can numb yourself, but it's harder, right? So like there's going to be all these moments of resistance. Maybe there's resistance to taking care of yourself really well. Maybe there's resistance to nourishing yourself, like guilt around that, not feeling worthy of receiving that. Like there's so many places throughout this process where the resistance is going to come in. And this is where we get to lean into the practices. So one of you also shared like that feeling of not being able to shift it. And sometimes when we're not able to shift it, when something feels really like it's consuming us and we're not able to shift it, it's often an invitation to go deeper into it first. Because with alchemy, what we tend to try to do is we want to skip to the rebirth. We're like, this situation is happening. I don't like it. Rebirth. Let's go to the rebirth. We do this with breakups, right? We're like, okay, I'm gonna, we go through a breakup and we're like, okay, let me get a new outfit and like, I'm having my glow up. It's like, not yet. You're not. Like, you got to go through the death first, We can do this with all kinds of things. We can't bypass the descent. And the more we resist the descent, the longer it tends to drag on. And so when that's happening, moving into the practices, moving into like moving the body, maybe the resistance is to nourishing yourself. Like maybe you're like, I know I really need a bath, but I'm just going to like keep scrolling on my phone or like keep looking for apartments, instead of taking care of my nervous system. Like there's so many ways that the resistance is going to show up. And the last piece here that I want to speak to is regulation. So throughout all of this, we're leaning into the resistance on one hand. We're moving through the resistance on one hand, which is going to feel like a threat to our nervous system. So while we're doing that, we also need to be regulating ourselves. And regulation looks like basically self-care, eating healthy meals, eating enough, eating regularly. That's like number one for so many women. We stop eating when we're stressed. I stop eating when I'm stressed. Like, it's a very common one. Just like committing to our practices, like doing our meditation or our breath work or whatever it is that we do in the morning, even when we're in a crisis or we're in a very stressful situation, it can be very easy to wake up and think, okay, I gotta start dealing with the crisis. And it's like, start from a regulated place, like keep your routines, drink enough water, like go for walks, do activities that remind you that you're safe as you're moving through this transition, because all of the resistance is happening because some part of your nervous system doesn't feel safe. That's the whole resistance. The whole resistance is like, that's not safe. To feel that, whatever it is, to feel the fear, to embrace that change, to let go of that person, whatever it is, it's some part of us doesn't feel safe. So we want to use the tools to move through the resistance, but the tools can also help us regulate our nervous system. All those tools I mentioned, like all the somatic tools, dancing, moving, stretching, running, breathing, like breath work, meditation, all those things are going to help us move through the resistance, but they're also going to help us regulate our nervous system. Pleasure is going to help us regulate our nervous system. So it's like the hardest thing to do because like the world feels like it's crumbling. And especially if we're stuck in the victim place, it's like, no, like I can't experience pleasure right now. I'm suffering. Excuse me, I'm suffering from this thing. Like, no way am I going to enjoy myself. But bringing pleasure is like, that is, and this is, again, this is where we now transition into the priestess, because the priestess is able to use pleasure to bring pleasure into this process and to bring presence to the pleasurable things that are happening, to the good that's all around us, to the things that we have to be grateful for in the midst of the crisis, the tower crumbling, everything is falling apart. There's like glimmers, or there's aspects of our lives that are still deeply wonderful and nourishing. And we tend to put our blinders onto those when we're in crisis. And the more that we can attune to and lean into the pleasure, it's going to challenge that part of us that wants to stay stuck as a victim, that wants to be like, life is against me, everything is against me, everything is happening to me. And, other people are not going to like it when you start to embrace pleasure with your crisis. Like, people, like, especially if they're stuck in victim, they want other people to be there too. And so it can feel even edgy to be like, yeah, I'm going through this and I'm going to consciously and actively choose to create pleasure in the midst of it. That is like, that's next level advanced. And that's why we culminate with the priestess. And that's what we're going to be talking about in our next workshop together.